The funniest thing about the World Cup being in America is that for 1 month, the rest of the planet is going to experience what Americans have been pretending is normal our entire lives. And I don't mean the obvious things, like the giant flags, the pickup trucks, the stadium nachos that look like they were engineered in a lab, or the fact that a European fan will order a medium soda and receive a bucket with a straw. I mean the deeper weirdness. The kind of weirdness where a fan from Germany looks at the match schedule and says, "Oh, maybe I can go from Los Angeles to New York for the next game." And an American has to gently explain that this is not like taking the train from Berlin to Munich. That is a continental migration. That is a quest. That is an emotional commitment with airport security. The kind of weirdness where someone buys a sandwich for $12, walks to the register, and the cashier says a different number because the tax was hiding like a little financial jump scare. The kind of weirdness where you go to a restaurant after the match and realize the menu price is not the final price. The tax is not included. The tip is not optional in the way people outside America think optional means optional. And suddenly dinner has turned into algebra with social consequences. And as an American living in Germany for the last 6 years, this is the part that fascinates me. World Cup fans are not just discovering American stadiums, they are discovering the American system. And America is a very fun country to visit, but it is also one of the strangest developed countries to be casually dropped into with a backpack, a jersey, and no context. Because the 2026 World Cup is not just big, it is historically ridiculous. It is the first men's World Cup with 48 teams. It is being played across 3 host countries, the United States, Mexico, and Canada. The tournament runs from June 11th to July 19th, with 104 matches across 16 cities. Canada is hosting matches in Toronto and Vancouver. Mexico has Mexico City, Guadalajara, and Monterrey. The United States has 11 host areas, from Los Angeles and Seattle to Miami, Dallas, New York/New Jersey, Atlanta, Kansas City, Houston, Philadelphia, Boston, and the San Francisco Bay Area. On paper, that sounds amazing. It sounds like a celebration of an entire continent. But then international fans start planning the trip and realize North America is not a country-sized tournament. It is a geography exam with surge pricing. A fan in Europe hears host cities and thinks, okay, I will travel between cities. Because in Europe, that is what you do. You finish a match in Dortmund, take a train, and maybe you are in Cologne or Amsterdam or Paris before your phone dies. But in America, a host city can be so far from the next host city that you are changing climates, time zones, and possibly your entire personality. Los Angeles to New York is roughly 2,400 miles. That is not a match day commute. That is the distance from London to somewhere beyond Istanbul. Seattle to Miami is even more absurd. Dallas to Boston is not a cute little train ride with snacks. It is a flight, a hotel, a rental car, a new set of emotional problems, and probably a $40 airport salad. And I know Americans watching this are like, yes, Maya, that is just how big the country is. And exactly, that is the point. Americans are used to scale in a way that a lot of visitors are not. We are raised with the idea that driving 6 hours is annoying but possible. We grow up hearing phrases like only 3 states away, as if that is a normal thing human beings should say. In Germany, if I drive 6 hours, people start asking if I am moving. So the first thing World Cup fans are discovering is that America sells distance as freedom. The open road, the road trip, the big sky, the giant map. And honestly, there is something beautiful about that. I still love an American road trip. I love the gas stations with 15 kinds of iced tea. I love that you can pull off the highway and find a diner where the waitress calls you honey and the pancakes are the size of legal documents. But when you are trying to follow a football tournament, that same freedom turns into a logistical trap. Because America does not just have big distances. America has built daily life around the assumption that you will solve those distances yourself. You will rent the car. You will pay for parking. You will sit in traffic. You will figure out the shuttle. You will calculate whether the hotel is really near the stadium or just near it in the American real estate sense, which means it is 25 minutes away by car and impossible on foot unless you enjoy crossing 8 lanes of suburban traffic like a confused video game character. And this is where international fans get their first real taste of American infrastructure. Some host cities are working hard to make transit easier. Los Angeles Metro announced special World Cup service to get fans to Los Angeles Stadium, with regular fares kept low on those routes. New York/New Jersey's official host committee is telling fans that there will be no general spectator parking on stadium property, and that official transportation has to be planned in advance. The UK government travel advice even warns fans that some venues may be a considerable distance from the host city, and that stadium routes will be very busy. That is government language for, please do not assume this is a cute stroll from the town square. And if you are loving this kind of outside looking in America breakdown, this is exactly the lane of the channel. Subscribe so when the next weird America versus the rest of the world story drops, it actually finds you again. Because once fans survive the transportation puzzle, then comes the money puzzle. This is the one I think will shock visitors the most, because America has a way of making every price feel like an opening offer. In Germany, when the menu says 15 euros, that is basically what you are paying. Tax is already included. Tipping exists, but it is usually rounding up or leaving a little extra if the service was good. You do not feel like you have accidentally become the payroll department of the restaurant. In America, the price is more like a suggestion with hidden DLC. A burger says $16, then sales tax appears. Then the payment tablet spins around with tip options starting at 18 or 20%, sometimes for counter service, sometimes for a bottle of water, sometimes in a situation where the only service was someone turning the iPad toward your face. And I need to be fair here. Servers in America often rely on tips because the US tipped wage system is built differently. The Department of Labor explains that under federal law, employers of tipped workers can pay as little as $2.13 an hour in direct wages, as long as tips bring the worker up to the regular minimum wage. So when a European fan says, "Why am I tipping so much?" the answer is not simply because Americans are dramatic. It is because the customer has been drafted into the wage system. That is such an American sentence. You went out for tacos and became part of labor policy. And this is why tipping feels emotionally heavier in America. In Germany, if I round up at a cafe, I feel polite. In America, if I don't tip properly, I feel like I may have personally destabilized someone's rent. Now imagine a World Cup tourist who has already paid for flights, hotels, match tickets, merch, ride shares, and then every single coffee asks them to make an ethical decision on a glowing screen. This is not just expensive, it is socially exhausting. And then we have sales tax. I will never stop thinking this is weird. Americans are so used to it that we barely question it. But to people from countries where VAT is included in the sticker price, this feels like being lied to by a shelf. You pick something up, it says $10. You take out $10. And America says, adorable, you forgot the invisible math. The reason is structural. In the United States, sales taxes are usually state and local, not one national included price system. So the rate can change depending on where you are, and sometimes what you are buying. That makes sense administratively, maybe, but emotionally, it makes every purchase feel slightly unfinished. A visitor goes to buy a jersey, food, sunscreen, a phone charger, maybe one of those emergency ponchos because the weather forecast lied, and the number keeps changing at the counter. It is not one giant shop. It is 100 tiny shocks. Also, this is the kind of topic I go deeper on with people who support the channel directly. If you want the more personal side of what it feels like to leave America and then watch the world react to America in real time, the membership is where I share those longer thoughts and extra context. Now let's talk about the thing that will really confuse younger fans: alcohol. In the US, the national legal age for buying alcohol is 21. The CDC and official travel advice both make that very clear. And for a lot of international fans, especially Europeans, that is going to feel strange because an 18, 19, or 20-year-old can travel across an ocean, book a hotel, attend a global sports event, join the military in some countries, vote in many democracies, but in the United States, they cannot legally buy a beer. And on top of that, open container laws can vary by state and city. In many places, walking around with alcohol in public can get you fined or worse. So you can have this hilarious cultural collision where fans from countries with public square drinking traditions show up thinking the city itself will become a giant football festival. And then America says, no, please keep the beer inside the designated zone, behind the fence, under the rules, with ID. That is America in one sentence. Chaotic and controlled at the same time. We have enormous highways, giant portions, wild advertising, and people dancing on trucks. But we also have ID checks, wristbands, bag policies, security lines, ticket apps, and a very serious person telling you that your tiny umbrella is not allowed inside. And this connects to another weird thing fans are discovering. American stadium culture is not the same as global football culture. In many countries, football is built around club neighborhoods, old rivalries, songs passed down across generations, and fans who arrive with drums, flags, scarves, and a level of emotional intensity that makes the stadium feel like a living organism. America has passionate soccer fans, absolutely. Major League Soccer supporter sections have real culture. Immigrant communities in the U.S. bring incredible football energy. The American Outlaws, the big U.S. national team supporters group, started in 2007 and now describes itself as having more than 200 chapters and over 30,000 members. So this is not me saying America has no football culture. It does. It is just newer, more fragmented, and competing with a sports culture built around something very different. American sports are full of prompts. Music blasts. The screen says, make noise. The mascot dances. There are timeouts, commercial breaks, cheerleaders, giveaways, kiss cams, t-shirt cannons, and a little animated race between three hot dogs. Global football, at its best, has a different rhythm. The game does not stop every 2 minutes so a sponsor can tell you about Truck Month. The crowd has to create the atmosphere because the sport gives them long stretches of continuous tension. So when international fans see an American crowd, they may be surprised by how organized and entertainment-driven it feels. Not bad, just different. It can feel less like a storm and more like an event package. And that brings us to food, because I need to be honest, this is where America might win people over. A lot of international fans are going to make fun of America for our prices, tipping, driving, and medical system. Fair. But then they are going to discover barbecue in Kansas City, tacos in Los Angeles, Cuban food in Miami, cheesesteaks in Philadelphia, Tex-Mex in Dallas and Houston, seafood in Seattle, and whatever spiritual experience happens when a jet-lagged person walks into an American breakfast diner at 7 a.m. American food culture is chaotic, but it is also generous in a way that people do not always expect. The portions are huge, the refills are free, the servers are friendly in a way that can feel almost suspicious if you come from a more reserved culture. Someone will call you buddy even though they met you 8 seconds ago. That warmth is real. That is one of the things I miss about America. Americans can be unbelievably open with strangers. A fan wearing a jersey from another country can end up in a parking lot conversation with a family from Ohio and somehow be invited to a tailgate, offered ribs, handed a lawn chair, and told the entire history of someone's uncle's knee surgery. This is the beautiful weirdness. America is expensive and confusing, but also incredibly welcoming in these spontaneous human ways. The problem is that the warmth sits on top of systems that are not very visitor-friendly unless you understand them. Take healthcare. The UK government's World Cup travel advice warns fans that medical treatment in the United States is not free, and that costs can be high. It specifically tells travelers to make sure their insurance covers medical treatment, hospitalization, and medical evacuation. To Americans, this is just practical advice. To many Europeans, it is terrifying. Because in a lot of countries, if you twist your ankle, faint from the heat, get dehydrated, or need emergency care, the financial question is not the first thing that enters your mind. In America, even visitors are told, please understand that if something goes wrong, the bill can become its own separate trauma. That is the kind of thing I mean when I say fans are discovering the system. They are not moving to America. They are visiting for football. But even visiting America requires this little layer of risk management around things that other countries treat as basic public infrastructure. Travel insurance, rental car insurance, tipping math, sales tax math, state laws, stadium transport, ID rules, hotel distances, surge pricing, heat warnings, apps for tickets, apps for shuttles, apps for parking, apps for food. America loves making you download an app for something that used to be a sign. And then there is the border reality. Because this is a 3-country World Cup, some fans may think they can bounce between the US, Canada, and Mexico like they are crossing between EU countries. But this is not Schengen. Entry rules are different in each country. The U.S. visa waiver program allows eligible travelers to visit for tourism or business for up to 90 days without a visa, but they need ESTA approval. Canada has its own electronic travel authorization for many visa-exempt air travelers. Mexico has its own entry rules, and official travel advice tells fans to check each country separately if they are visiting more than one. Again, that is not impossible. Millions of people travel this way, but it is not casual, it is paperwork. And for a sport that creates this fantasy of one global family, the North American version still has borders, forms, documents, and the possibility that the person at immigration asks where you are staying and whether you have proof of onward travel. So when fans say America is weird, they are often reacting to the contrast. America is extremely informal socially, but extremely formal administratively. A stranger will talk to you like you are cousins at a gas station, but the stadium gate will reject your screenshot because the official app needs to refresh the ticket. The bartender will ask where you are from and tell you their life story, but if you are 20, no beer. The country will advertise freedom constantly, but you may need a car to buy groceries, an app to reach the stadium, insurance to survive an emergency room, and a 20% tip to complete dinner without shame. That is the contradiction. And this is why the World Cup in America is such a fascinating cultural mirror. Because for Americans, all these things are scattered across daily life. We don't experience them as one big system. We just call it Tuesday. But visitors experience them all at once. They land at the airport, wait in immigration, take an expensive rideshare, discover the hotel is not walkable, buy a meal with added tax, get asked for a tip, realize their phone plan is acting weird, try to take public transit to a stadium that was built for cars, get carded for a beer, and then watch the most global sport on earth inside a country that still calls it soccer. No wonder they are confused. And no wonder some of them are also delighted. Because America is not only frustrating, it is theatrical, it is loud, it is generous, it is absurdly convenient in some ways and bizarrely difficult in others. It will make you wait 40 minutes for a shuttle and then give you the best tacos of your life from a truck in a parking lot. It will charge you for everything and then refill your coffee for free. It will make you feel like the country is built for cars, but then someone in the car next to you will roll down the window and compliment your jersey. That is the America I know. The country is maddening, but the people can be magic. So I hope World Cup fans enjoy it. I really do. I hope they see the big skies, the food, the music, the multicultural cities, the immigrant neighborhoods, the kindness of strangers, the weird roadside attractions, the ridiculous stadiums, and the fact that America can throw a spectacle like almost nowhere else on earth. But I also hope they notice the weird parts, because sometimes it takes visitors to say out loud what locals have been trained to accept quietly. Why is the price not the price? Why is transit to a major stadium so complicated? Why is tipping carrying so much moral pressure? Why does a medical emergency require financial planning? Why is a country that calls itself free so full of tiny systems you have to navigate perfectly? And if you are watching this from outside the US, I want to know what shocked you most when you visited America. Was it the driving? The portions? The tipping? The friendliness? The prices? The fact that the toilet stalls have gaps big enough to create diplomatic tension? Drop it in the comments, because I swear every answer reveals something. The World Cup is going to show America to the world, but it is also going to show America to Americans. And honestly, that might be the most interesting match of the whole tournament.